Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today, we'll be talking about a couple of very important issues. Obviously, one is about the misleading effort of the Indians to the diplomats stationed in New Delhi. And this is going to be the third time they'll be taking them to the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Primarily, the stage has been set in a way that they won't be able to find any of the wrongdoings of the Indians there. That is number one. They will not be taken to certain areas where there is problem. Number three, they'll be only shown certain areas of illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir where there are certain well-being efforts have been made for those who are living in Kashmir, or those in particular who have been shifted to Kashmir to change the demographics. Now, that is one area. Since the abrogation of the Article 370 and 35A, the special status of the Kashmiris have been taken away. That has been snatched. Protests, they were taking place all over the world, but interesting part was that nothing has been done. And interestingly, when we say that a lot of international communities, or for that matter, certain countries which are very powerful, very influential, if they are making any effort regarding the human rights violations, I mean, they have also been contained by the Indians in a very, very effective way. Now, a lot has been happening, and today we'll be talking about a couple of very major areas of discussion. But having said that, we'll also share some very important information with you in our today's program. So today we'll be talking about the guided tours of diplomats are a smoke screen aimed at diverting international attention from India's egregious human rights violations in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and creating a false impression of normalcy, stated by the Foreign Office of Pakistan. They further said that the visit would mean nothing if there is no access to all the areas and possibility to freely interact with the Kashmiri people and the civil society in an atmosphere free of intimidation. Again, stated by the Foreign Office. Foreign Office further says the illegal and inhumane military siege continues for over 18 months now. Extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris in fake encounters and stage cordon and search operations have become rampant. Arbitrary detentions, enforced disappearances, and custodial torture have increased. Kashmiri leadership remain incarcerated. Journalists, human rights activists are being harassed. And interestingly, when you talk about certain human rights organizations, there is a ban on them regarding money laundering and so many other issues, and their properties have also been confiscated by the government. The Foreign Office further states that India must also allow the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, the United Nations observers, the OIC Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission, international human rights and civil society organizations, and international media to visit illegally Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir and assess the situation on ground. Now, other than that, since I was doing research on this particular matter, and I ended up finding something very interesting, and that was about the Hindu ecosystem. Now, when we talk about the Hindu ecosystem, what exactly is that supposed to mean? That is supposed to mean that a certain environment needs to be created to promote the overall interest of the Hindus, their well-being and all, whereas the minorities, and in particular the Muslims, this is going to be a hate factory, I would say. And hundreds of thousands youngsters and even the members of the BJP under the command of Kapil Mishra, one of the known BJP leaders, this is happening. The Congress knows about it, they have condemned it, but now this is the new face of India. You talk about the secular India, for God's sake, this is what is happening out there. An ecosystem for the Hindus, where they'll be promoted, their interests would be promoted, they would be safeguarded. But when it comes to the Muslims, you can well imagine those amendments they have made, where they have been practically discarded in a way that where would they go, nobody knows. And there are millions and millions of them. To talk about this, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Parvez Ahmed Saab. He is the leader of All Parties Hurriyat Conference. Thank you so much, Parvez Saab, for your time. And we also have with us on Skype Lieutenant General retired Raza Muhammad Khan Saab. General Saab, thank you so much, sir, for your time as well. And we will be talking to Imran Jan Saab, who's a senior journalist, and he's going to join us on the telephone from United States of America. Thank you so much, Imran Jan, for your participation as well. But let me put the first question to you, Parvez Saab. Obviously, we do understand the real situation, and who would know better than you? But when we talk about that the Indians are taking the high commissioners and the diplomats of various countries to the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir just to show them a picture of all the hunky-dory feel, that is not the reality. Now they're showing that, oh, well, you know, we have restored the 4G after 18 months. We have done this for the Kashmiris. But practically on ground, the realities have been changed. And we know that these certain number of diplomats would only be taken to those areas which are in total control of the Indian military and where nothing can be done. Obviously, the voice of the Kashmiris, the legitimate, I would say, indigenous, homegrown independence movement, it has been sabotaged. And they have been shown as if they are terrorists. So your take, let's start off from there.
Thank you very much. Mr. Faisal, first of all, I would like to thank Pakistan Television for giving us the opportunity to talk about the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. As you know, in Jammu and Kashmir, the voices of the leadership, especially the leadership which is representing the sentiments of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, it has been choked, and the laws have been passed, and the media outlets in Indian-occupied Kashmir are not allowed to carry any news relating to Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Whatever comes out from Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir is just smuggled news, and what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir, nobody knows. So in this situation, I'm very thankful to Pakistan Television and some other news outlets who give us an opportunity to speak on behalf of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Coming to this, the tours which India has managed this tour, and as you rightly said that it is guarded, but I can say it is pampered. I can say it is a pampered tour. We have seen in past, since 5th of August, two delegations from European Union. They visited Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and they were not allowed to speak to the common people. However, few of them even they spoke their conscience, and they talked that they were not allowed to meet the common people. This was one kind of embarrassment to India. As you rightly said that Jammu and Kashmir is a no-go area for international human rights organizations or humanitarian organizations. We have seen in different conflict zones, whether it may be Afghanistan, it may be Palestine, it may be Syria, the human rights organizations work there. The humanitarian organizations work there.
They knew the magnitude about the problem.
Yeah, but Kashmir is the only area in the world where the human rights organizations are completely barred. It's a no-go area from them. In such a situation, as you have rightly said, as Foreign Office said, in 2018 and 2019, when High Commissioner for Human Rights submitted the report to Human Rights Council, they made a request to India that let fact-finding mission be allowed to visit Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir to assess the situation. This is the most credible institution in the world, and India is the member of that organization. But India did not allow it because of its impartiality. It is the India which has banned Amnesty International, and they have locked their office in New Delhi. The only sin was that they just speak about the miseries of the Kashmiris. I today spoke to my colleagues in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. When these diplomats landed on international airport of Srinagar, from airport to Srinagar, there was a complete security blanket on the both sides of the airport. Thousands of the security men guarding these diplomats, and even none of the Kashmiris were allowed to speak. But Kashmir adopted a civilized way. They just observed a strike. Kashmir was completely, there was a lockdown, and it gave a clear and crystal message to these diplomats that something is not what India is going to portray. Secondly, we have seen those, even those elected members in the recent election, GDC elections, those who were elected independently or who were representing the national conference or those regional parties, they were confined in different hotels or in different houses. They were guarded. They were not even allowed to speak. Only those people who were representing the BJP, they were allowed to talk to them, and they were allowed, and they were just already informed what they have to speak to them. So in such a situation, how it is credible that those diplomats who visited Jammu and Kashmir, it can change any kind of a narrative about the Kashmir when Kashmiris have given the verdict to today. We are not against these delegations. Let these delegations come to Jammu and Kashmir.
But they should be a
but
proper
they
tour.
should be allowed, they should be free.
Transparent tour.
If they are allowed, let them visit to the graves where hundreds and thousands of people are buried. Let them talk to those half widows whose husbands are absent or who are missing for the last couple of years, and even they cannot marry. Let them meet Insha.
And interestingly, what about those? I mean, you talk, Insha is the daughter.
the Insha whose eyes were blinded by the pellet guns. Let them meet to those people, leaders who are in detention, because they are the true representatives of the Jammu and Kashmir. They are representing the aspirations of the people.
And
of
the genuine leadership of Kashmir,
yes,
either they are in jails
Yeah.
or they are confined to the
no,
houses,
I can even
and they are house arrested. I mean,
No,
so
even
much
I
is
can
going on.
talk of those leaders who were before 5th of August, who were just promoting Indian narrative in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Even Umar Abdullah in a statement said that this is a guided tour and you should not expect anything positive from this. So we have never been against the visitors, but the position of the All Party Hurriyat Conference is that they should be free from any coercion, they should be allowed to meet common people and let them know what the Kashmiris are asking for.
Exactly. Now, let me come to Jalal Sahab, to you, and let me put this question. When we say the credibility of these tours, there's no credibility, to be very honest, because these are the guided tours. They'll be taken to certain selected places. They'll be only allowed to meet those who would, in fact, talk about the BJP and the government out there. But reality is totally different, sir. Don't you think that these diplomats are seasoned enough to understand what's going on rather than what's been shown to them?
Yes, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think I totally support what you say. These diplomats are very seasoned people, they're very experienced people. They can differentiate, between the constraints of a guided tour, programmed tour by the government, and a free tour. So while they are there, we hope that something they will bring in, the real situation back to their country, and be not misled or misguided by whatever the Indians are trying to show them. In my view, I think it would be actually an exercise in futility, as it was, the previous year and the year before that, because the aim and scope of this visit is based on lies and deception at the international level, which seems to be now the metrics of the present Indian government, and everything else is secondary to that. As was pointed out, there was a complete shutdown of shops and businesses. What I have read from the media is that they were straight driven from the airport to Budgam to a government school where some, fake councillors were sitting who were selected to some fake elections, and they were met there. But the genuine leaders, even from the previous BJP supporters, like the PDP and the National Conference, they were not invited. This is what they have said. Obviously, the APHC was not invited. So the people representatives were not there. They did not meet the people there. There was no representation of the United Nations military observer groups, which are under house arrest in Srinagar. And of course, so this is something I think which I'm sure all those diplomats must have noted. Also, I noted, from the list provided by the Indian media that they're saying that there were representatives from about two dozen countries. In that, I found that out of the
So
permanent member
primarily,
of Indian security.
Jalsab, if I may ask you a question, because when you say that more than 2 dozen, or let's say whatever the number of diplomats was, primarily they were all from those countries which are pretty close to India now, Gulf countries and the European countries. Jalsab.
Yes, that is what I was trying to say. That amongst those countries, the significant ones were missing. I mean, Russia is missing, US is missing, UK is missing. I don't know. I'm sure they have their own reasons why they were missing. Of course, out of the permanent members of the Security Council, France was there, and one can understand the reason for that. It was the Rafael and others and other issues. Out of the OIC countries, Bangladesh and Malaysia has been there, and we hope that through the OIC, these two governments will be able to communicate the true picture of whatever they saw there to their own countries, and we hope that they will also share their perceptions with Pakistan being members of the OIC, and having agreed to the many resolutions about Kashmir by these two countries by themselves. I think I would say this again, that they were according again, while it was said that there was a lot of security. I think one of the Indian media channels said that in order to again deceive these delegations, at least half of these security measures which were placed immediately before this visit, they were told to get onto the site or to hide themselves. So again, that was an exercise in international deception. All this does not augur well either for the Indian government or for all these delegations who have visited there. And we hope that they would communicate, their true perceptions based on reality, not only to their own countries but also to the OIC, because they have an obligation to that, and
Yeah.
also to the United Nations.
All right. Now, coming to you, Imran Saab, obviously, when you talk about the history of the Indian governments, I mean, misleading has always been something which has been very common. And I'm not saying it's only related to the BJP. Even Congress at times, whenever they are in power, they have a very different attitude. Obviously, when they are in the opposition, then they would look into certain reasons, to create a problem for the ruling government. But so over here, when we hear something of this sort, that India is trying to present a false and misleading narrative, especially on the situation in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and taking these, let's say 2 dozen foreign diplomats and trying to show them that everything seems to be pretty good, nothing is what people have been talking about. But sir, these guided tours, do you think they can actually give that kind of credibility to the BJP government, sir?
Um, to answer your question shortly, and then I'll explain, yes, they can. And the reason for that is, as much as we may hate it, as much as we all know that it's nothing but a farce, the interesting part and the sad part also is that not only is it India that is creating this farce and giving this impression that things are normal and everything is fine and there are no human rights violations in Kashmir, the sad part is these countries visiting are also interested in that fake world, that fake lies created for them. Remember, will these countries accept if Iran were to say, let's give you a tour, we do not make nuclear weapons in this country, look, everything is fine, it's just for peaceful purposes? Will they even accept to go on a journey like that? Would these countries have accepted if Saddam had said back in 2003 that let me take you on a tour, we do not have weapons of mass destruction in my country, which there were none, by the way. Nobody accepted that at the time. The country was just invaded, and some of these countries right now were part of that invasion. So it just doesn't surprise me, and the reason these trips, these fake trips, these farce trips, are going to create the desired result is because the countries visiting are also interested in the lie. Remember back in Afghanistan when the Mujahideen were fighting against the Soviet Union, journalists from the leading American and British newspapers would go and pay the local actors, including some of the real Mujahideen fighters, to create a fake fight so they could take photographs because those photographs sold very well in the United States. It was all about money. It was all about the hype and the drama. These countries right now going there are doing nothing different. There's just a slight different angle to it, but it's the same story. When they know about a threat, they just invade the country in the name of responsibility to act or some other legal fiction that they come up with. When they don't want to do that, when they want to accept this fake reality, these lies, then they go on trips like these. So again, to me, it is already the fact that they agreed to even go there and accept the narrative spun by Narendra Modi speaks volumes about how willing they are to accept that. President Biden was very bold in saying that the people who attacked the Capitol Hill on January 6th were terrorists. People who believe in the QAnon radicalism are, indeed American domestic terrorists. Will he call the same RSS Hindutva as terrorists too? Will he be willing to do that? So that actually is quite sad to think that there's a double standard, and as I mentioned, the countries visiting are more interested in the lies than the country that is hosting them. It's a propaganda tour on both sides, and as was mentioned, France has interest in selling them those jet fighters, selling India the jet fighters.
Absolutely. Economic interest, it's all about that at the end of the day, and obviously the kind of relationship the Indians are enjoying with the French and a couple of other countries. That tells you the story. Now, Parvez Saab, a couple of important points. Arguments are always there in all the parliaments all over the globe, sir. But recently, a lot has been talked about the BJP government by the Congress in general. Couple of leaders have said that 2611, or you talk about the parliament attack in 2000-2001, or you talk about the Pulwama attack, and we all know about the history and the details now. You talk about the very, very unfortunate incident of Samjhota Express. You talk about the incident of Pathankot, or you talk about the killings of Sikhs in Kashmir. Sir, these are all planned by the Indians, executed by the Indian agencies, and primarily the blame was put on Pakistan to malign Pakistan. The Disinfo Lab story, which was operating in more than 170 countries, sir, is right in front of you. This sort of a false tour or a guided tour, again, is another example. Because they are getting the support of the Western world, sir, to build up a certain narrative. And Indians, they know the art of building a narrative through the media, sir. We should understand and we should also look at their strengths. Now, sir, having said that, when we say that more than 3.4 million, 34 lakh certificates have been distributed, obviously the demographics would change. And maybe another 10 years from now, they call for a plebiscite. And since the demographics would be changed to that level, that, they will say, oh, wow, all these independent so-called observers are here. And see, everything is great, good. This is what they plan to do, sir.
Yes, basically India has...
What's the counter narrative you have?
India has adopted two-pronged strategy in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. One is the ethnic cleansing of the Kashmiris, because they know...
Kashmiris or the Muslim Kashmiris?
Because this is a Muslim majority state, so the main target is the Muslim. And you have seen that when you see the list of the killings, you will always say the Muslim boys or Muslim women who are being killed. The main objective is that because you have to give the right to self-determination to the living person. A dead cannot cast his vote. So first of all, is their agenda number one to eliminate the Muslim majority element. Second is the demographic changes, and for this they are bringing the non-state subjects and they are settled in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And third one is to break the will of the people who are struggling. And this is the reason to break the will, to discourage the people. They are bringing these kind of guided delegations to Indian
Ground
occupied.
realities are also changing?
No,
Rohit
not
sir?
at all, not at all, because Kashmiris have today given their verdict. If you see, the whole Kashmir is under complete lockdown. There was a strike call given by all parties Hurriyat conference, and it was well responded by the people, and it was a civilized way.
Correct.
Now the question arises that in such a situation, what Kashmiri can do? If we just see, there are reports in this coronavirus we have seen, we have 69. For 69,000 people, we had one doctor, and for 89,000 people, we had one ventilator. And for 9 Kashmiris, there is a one army man guarding to them. In such a situation, you can see what will be the pain and what kind of a fear psychosis there will be among the Kashmiris. But you see, after 5th of August, India has made multiple attempts to break the will of the people. But you can say even they have put the ban on the funerals, even they have denied freedom of speech and expression. But we have seen people of Jammu and Kashmir were knowing there have been posters in Jammu and Kashmir, and they were just mentioning in these posters their resentment. Although they have denied them the freedom of speech, but those Kashmiris, they have the black flags on their rooftops, so they are resisting. Because as you say, because Kashmiris are not we cannot say Kashmir is fighting a war. They are resisting the Indian occupation. And this can be the only way of resistance. You can observe the complete strike, you can just hoist the flags, and you can put the posters on this. But coming to this, definitely these, as Imran had said, definitely it will make impact to some extent. It can be a barrier in our freedom struggle, but it doesn't mean that it will completely wash out the sentiment of the Jammu and Kashmir. Secondly, what India is selling, there is a reason. If we see the popular sentiment or popular slogan of the people of Jammu and Kashmir, the popular slogan of people of Jammu and Kashmir, we are Pakistanis and Pakistan is ours. This is the main hurdle which irritates India. Had there been any other thought, any other ideology in Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, situation have been altogether different. So in this situation, when Kashmiris are just giving their will that they should be buried in Pakistani flag, and when they are hoisting the flags on 14th of August when they celebrate Pakistan Day, and this will definitely irritate India. How do you expect that they will create any kind of a space? But as just we have rightly said that as Human Rights High Commissioner has asked both India and Pakistan to allow fact-finding mission to visit both sides of Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, it will restore a credibility to Pakistan. Let them allow. Because there is nothing to hide in Indian occupied Kashmir. Let them allow the fact-finding mission to Azad Kashmir, and when they will see the situation, definitely it will definitely bring back foot to Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir. But I certainly agree that it can be a barrier, but it cannot stop the way to our freedom, to our goal.
Well, that is yet to be seen, because when you look at the countries which are going there, so let me quickly: Chile, Brazil, Cuba, Bolivia, Estonia, Finland, France, Ireland, Netherlands, Portugal, EU, Belgium, Spain, Sweden, Italy, Bangladesh, Malawi, Eritrea, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Senegal, Malaysia, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. Now, sir, some are Muslim countries and most of them are European countries. Now, obviously, when we talk about certain countries like France or these Scandinavian countries, I mean, especially the Scandinavian countries, I think they have championed in one area, and that is about the human rights. Do you think, sir, this camouflage can also sort of give a false impression to these people? Or whenever they write their weekly report, obviously, sir, about a few days ago, I was following the story that a certain arrangement was made at the Foreign Office where they were showing the pictures and they were telling what exactly is going on in the Indian occupied Kashmir. Now, it seems, sir, that on one side, those high commissioners or the diplomats of those countries who are stationed in Pakistan are given a totally different report, whereas those who are stationed in Delhi and are visiting these areas, they'll be given a very different narrative. So don't you think this is going to be an element of absolute confusion, or you believe that whenever reports are written and sent back to their foreign offices in their respective countries, that they would gauge both the countries and they would be able to sort of draw some logical conclusion? Or you think whosoever has planned it well, whosoever has managed it well, that is going to make the difference?
I think, all these countries who went there, as we discussed earlier, either did so because of diplomatic courtesies, or because they had other motives of their trade and defense-related cooperations with India. But when it comes to preparations of their factual and actual reports, I think they are going to be very realistic in their assessment. They are going to be truthful in their assessment. Uh, I think they will not deceive their own foreign office, and they will not be influenced by the lies and deceptions that has been shown to them by the Indian authorities. So I think that should be the total value of these visits. Uh, Secondly, I'd like to point out, that when it comes, to the American involvement in the issue of Kashmir, we know that Donald Trump had offered a number of times for mediations, but then nothing came out of that, and he backed off. And now, Mr. Joe Biden, in his inaugural speech, he talked mainly of tolerance, of truth, of patience, understanding for the pain of others. So I think the total opposite of that is happening in India. And he can see that India is not that mighty, self-reliant, biggest democracy of the world, because if that democracy can order, the Delhi police to fly to Delhi about 2,200 kilometers away to Bengaluru to arrest, a student, 21-year student, for some tweet that she made. That means that there is a government of cowards and there is a government of intolerant people. These are the people who do not believe in democracy. They have no humanity, no civility, no decency, and no transparency. And therefore, I think the earlier the new Biden administration understands this, the better it would be. I think the Biden administration should really make an effort and direct their embassy in Delhi to send an independent delegation to meet, the politicians and people from all walks of life in Kashmir, and then communicate that report to their government so that they can see whether the policies of the previous American administration were right, or they need to revise and reappraise their policies on Kashmir. And as far as the Kashmiris themselves are concerned, if I'm sure that the Kashmiris have proved to the world that they are prepared to die for their freedom, and also that if the Indian government tries, to change the demography of Kashmir, and if they try and snatch away their land, I'm sure each one of them will be prepared to die for whatever rightfully belongs to them. So that is, it may be a plan in the offing, but I think that plan is also eventually going to fail.
But Jalal Sahab, I think the demography has already been changed. When you talk about 4.4 million, 34 lakh certificates have been issued. Look at the total population. Look at the number of military personnel deployed there. Look at the changes they are making. I would say in another maybe a decade, even less than a decade, they would totally change it. Things would be different, because now primarily the agenda of the Indians to take these diplomats to the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir isn't primarily to show them that everything seems to be fine. Primarily they are talking about the terror which India has gone through. God knows what sort of a terror which they have done to themselves actually, and they would try to tell them that this is what it is all about maligning Pakistan. This is exactly what seems to be happening in the next coming couple of days, sir, isn't it?
Well, I think, as I said, they may have issued, hundreds of thousands of certificates to people to go and settle in Kashmir. But I said it is not easy, even for I think retired military officers to leave, the peace and security of mainland India and to come and live there. So one will have to wait and see, whether they can do that or not. Look, even in Israel, I think when the United States and the whole West is uh, in support and their support, it's not easier. It was not easier even for them to sustain this kind of an activity. And I'm sure it is not going to be easy for India to sustain that. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. But as I said again, I think the key to the solution of the Kashmir problem essentially lies in the permanent member of the UN Security Council, and amongst them, I think we should focus more on trying to influence the US policies and also in coordination with our friend China and the OIC and other states, other nations who believe that human rights they have to be respected, who actually believe that people cannot for long be enslaved like they are being enslaved here in Kashmir, and that whatever policies India is following, it is not sustainable, neither sustainable for India nor for the people of India, and that eventually such policies are going to discredit India. It is going to be against the interest of India itself and against the interest of peace, stability, and prosperity in the entire South Asia. And also, unless the Kashmir issue is resolved, I think the linked issue of Afghanistan will be very difficult to resolve.
I totally agree with you that, sir. I mean, Kashmir issue in one way or the other, I mean, it's linked to the entire peace of the region. But, sir, I'll take this question to Imran Jan. Imran Jan, if you remember, when Barack Obama took charge as the 44th President of the United States of America, I still remember that he had made a lot of commitments. He talked about Kashmir. He talked about Afghan issue. He talked about closing down of Guantanamo Bay. He talked about so many international issues. Couldn't do much because obviously when you make comments, you try to win the support and the feelings of the people. But when it comes to the real implementation, there are very, very difficult challenges ahead also. So when we talk about Biden, forget about the kind of experience he has. That's more than 48 years, almost my age. But what I'm saying is that this gentleman is a very hardcore politician, is a very sound, I would say, Democrat. But a lot cannot be expected from him because when it comes to the ground realities, things are pretty different, aren't they?
Of course, what you said is right, Faisal. President Biden was the vice president when Modi was cleared to travel to the United States. Remember, after the 2002 Gujarat massacre, Modi was put on a ban to enter the United States. He was labeled almost as a terrorist. But as soon as Modi was elected in India, President Obama removed that ban, and that famous hug between Obama and Modi made headlines everywhere. Biden at the time was the vice president, as we all know. Biden has never been a change maker. He has never been the one to question the status quo in politics. He has been in government for a long time. So expecting to bring any change from him is just expecting too much. And I guess my phone had problem before. I don't know if you heard my comment that these countries accepting to travel to India to buy into that farce by India are also part of this farce because they are. Why does a fact-finding mission even need to be sent? No fact-finding mission is ever sent before a country is invaded. When they want to know silence is not an option in the face of such brutality. If you are silent, if you are quiet, you are part of that brutality. You take your side by not saying anything. You take the side of that brutality. So to say that the United States has not become part of that delegation is as bad as becoming a part of that delegation. Because they have not condemned it, they have not gone forth and said, well, we condemn these activities in Kashmir. This is a human rights violation. And someone mentioned about that we should remind the OIC and other countries who believe in human rights. I'm sorry, but I do not know of a country. I cannot find that country on a map that believes in human rights. It's always about economic interests. Even when peace is pursued, it is also for economic interests. So that's just too much to expect for any country to raise their voice for the sake of human rights. There is no such thing in our world, at least. We do not live in that world. I also wouldn't be surprised if some of these rich countries that are part of that delegation were there to look for investment opportunities. Because these rich countries and strong countries go by what's called bounty law. If they can find something that they can invest and make money, they'll go for it. You know, Elon Musk, let me give you an example of that, always talks about climate change and, reducing the carbon emissions. And then he goes and announces to open up a Tesla factory in India, which is one of the worst carbon emitters in the world. Nothing ever comes to his mind about that at that time when he opens that factory in India. So, it's a farce not only created by India, but also accepted by these countries visiting and the countries who are, very importantly, the countries that are choosing to stay silent right now. Those are equally part of this crime when they do not raise their
Again,
voice.
as I said, I think the next years are very important as well, because this FATF issue, this hanging gun of FATF is still there. And let's see how Pakistan manages that, because again, when it comes to India, the way they are maligning Pakistan, the way they are, making a complete, I would say, a package where they would be going after us regarding that, because unfortunately, the world thinks that we are a terrorist nation, whereas the Indians are the victims. It's the other way around. They are terrorists and we are the victim nation. We have lost more than 83,000 people, just imagine. But it's very, very unfortunate, but I hope that sanity prevails at the end of the day. All right, Imran, thank you so much. Jalsa, was a pleasure having you, and thank you so much, Parvez. But definitely we'll be doing another show soon, perhaps this week or maybe the next, regarding this Hindu ecosystem. Now, that is a new phenomena that has been developed by the extremist Hindus and the Indians, and it's all over India and perhaps in certain major countries as well, where there is a good decent number of Indians living. And what they are trying to do is something which is going to, in fact, honestly speaking, would surprise you to a level that we never thought on those lines. And look what they are up to. Supported by the BJP government, financed by the BJP government, so many groups have been created. People are just are told to come and join those groups and build up narratives. Now, this is exactly how the soft power is being used in India. But anyway, I'll see you tomorrow. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.